let's say I wanted to, let's say I have another variable assigned, and I assign it to first name. Okay, like I say prop equals first name. Okay. Now I can say person and use array notation, person prop, and I'll get Carl. And notice there I'm not using quotation marks, right? Why not? Because that's a variable, and the variable itself doesn't have the quotation marks. It's representing the string. The value of it does have the quotation marks. Okay? And so you can kind of, yeah, so like you have this variable, and you just plug it into the array notation, and you'll get, yeah. So first prop is first name, and then I change it to last name. And so each time, yep. So because prop equals first name, doing this is the same thing as doing that, right? Because I just said that the two things were equal, right? Okay. So then I can just change the value of prop depending on which property I want to get. Okay. So then it gets kind of cool for the more advanced people here, right? Because now you can loop through this object, and you can say, oh, depending on what type of value it is, we're going to do something different with it. If it's a function, then we're going to call the function. Otherwise, we're just going to set it to be that thing, right? And so blah will equal the result of saying person. In this case, it'll the only person element there that's a function is hello, and so that one will be called. Otherwise, it'll just show what it is, what the value is. Okay, and that's a fancy way of saying if-then, that using the question mark and the colon. Okay, object literals are greatest function arguments, right? How many of you have seen this kind of thing in a jQuery plugin when you've used a jQuery plugin? Yeah, or any jQuery method, right? Like a lot of them use this. They use these object literals, right? And the really nice thing about this is that inside the plugin or inside the jQuery function, it has a set of defaults, right? And so you can just set one or more of these options to override the defaults, right? And then the other ones will just use the default value, right? And you can put them in any order within that object, right? It doesn't matter because they're all keyed up to those properties. It's nice. Instead of having like 15 arguments, you just have one argument, and it's a lot more descriptive that way too, right? You can see, the speed is fast, the height is 500, the width is 200, instead of like having 3 arguments and having the first one be fast, the second one 500, and the third one 200. This happens to me all the time. I'm like, which argument goes first? Which argument goes second? How does that work? Like in other languages. This kind of thing is really nice when you have a lot of things. OK, so JSON, or some people will say JSON. I say JSON. How many of you have heard of this? Heard of it? OK, awesome. Do you know what it is? I mean, sort of, but you may not realize that it's a subset of this JavaScript object literal notation, right? And it's a subset, and it's very specific about how it has to be, about its syntax, right? So you may have noticed here that the keys in that object, like speed, height, width, something else, none of those have quotes around them. the quotes are optional. You can put them in there. And remember, you can do single quotes or double quotes, doesn't matter. If you're using JSON, they have to be quoted. Okay? And they have to be double quotes. All strings have to have double quotes. That's the rule. And Douglas Crockford made the rules, and he's not about to change them. So you can't use functions either as property values. So there you have it. JSON notation, an awesome thing about it is that, like, if you're using a server-side language, you can have that server-side language create the JSON for you. You could, like, Ruby has a toJSON method, I think. Yeah. And PHP has a JSON encode method, so it'll take a PHP array and it'll turn it into a JSON string. And so you don't have to worry about the syntax. You don't have to worry about, oh, I'm using double quotes, blah, 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 right? Rolling your own by hand is a dangerous business because you'll probably, you'll mess it up at some point. I have. This is why I've tried to kick the habit. So this is JSON, right? This is what it looks like. It's just like object literal notation. Typically, it'll look something more like this. Like it won't be all pretty printed out for you.